everyone. This is Maria Hocking, the UK life changer, passionate about changing lives with my heart and my words. Today, I'm here to interview Aimee Stewart, who is a soul-led life coach, and we're going to talk about overcoming adversity and turning pain into power. So before we start, Aimee, it's really good to have you here. Would you like to tell people a little bit about what you do as a soul-led life coach?
Yes, thank you so much for having me today, Maria. So last year, January of 2020, I began my business properly. I mean, I had been working ad hoc with the odd client previous to that over the kind of 8 years before that. That was very much a word of mouth thing that was not planned and not structured. And yeah, last January, I decided, right, now's the time to properly put my heart and soul into my business. And it, the soul element to my business is really important to me, as is all the other aspects. I believe that we're a mind, we're a body, and we're a soul. And for me, incorporating the soul into my work is really important because it's an aspect to definitely therapeutic work sometimes that can be missing. So it was really important for me to be able to take my soul into my work. So yeah, I started off by beginning an 8-week in-person program in local city that I live in Inverness. And yeah, there was about 20 people that came along, and it really was life-changing for me and for them. And I was able to tell my story really for the first time. I had told close friends, and obviously my family knew my story, but I kind of omitted it from most people that would know me, wouldn't really know about my past and about my history. And it's a really important part of who I am. And I believe that all of our experiences that lead us to this point, be they good, bad, amazing, ugly, indifferent, make us who we are. So yeah, and through doing that, as a byproduct of that, I didn't really realize what was going to happen as a result of that, but it's inspired other people to realize that actually, if they've had difficult experiences in their past, it's not something to be ashamed of or something to lock away in a box, that actually we can take these things out, we can sift through them, and we can integrate them so that we become our whole true amazing selves. And we don't have to show an element of ourselves that is pleasing to other people. Actually, we can accept everything about ourselves. So yeah, that's
powerful words. Okay, and you're talking about your story, and obviously when I first met you, it was many years ago now, wasn't it? We met on a course together, didn't we, Aimee? And when I first met you, there was just this lightness and this sunshine about you, and I kind of had a feeling that you kind of been through stuff in your life, because quite often you find that people who've been through tough times can end up sort of shining, if that makes sense, or having used the adversity, having turned the pain into power. And it was shortly after that I discovered that you have been through stuff, and I would love you to kind of share a bit about the adversity that you've been through here today, and how you got through that. But let's just start with your story. What would you like to share today?
Well, my story began when I was born, really. And it wasn't until I got to about 20 that I realised, wow, I've got some stuff to work through. Because life, as it does, just happens to us, or happens for us, actually, I've come to realise. And I hadn't realised, actually, that had all impacted upon me. So when I was 5, my older sister Naomi died really suddenly, and no one will ever actually know whether it was suicide or whether it was an accident. There were 8 tablets found in her system that she'd had an allergic reaction to. She was 13, and no one will know whether she took them all at once, took them over the course of an evening. So there's lots of uncertainty around her death, and I didn't learn of that full explanation of her death until I was actually older than 20. I think I was 24. And I realise and understand why I wasn't. I was only 5 at the time. Now I've got my own 4.5-year-old, and I know that, parents only want to protect their children. So yeah, what I knew of her death was that she died of an allergic reaction, which is true. But yeah, and learning the whole truth just made me recognize that life is hard, and it hits us hard, and we lose people we love. A lot of us lose people we love, and working through that pain and that loss has actually given me a really strong sense of spirituality, of connection to life, and actually the realization that Naomi in her being was actually a huge gift to our family. And yeah, that's it really.
And that must have been a really tough thing to go through. Do you think obviously when it happened it must have been like really, really tough? I know that you must still find it hard now looking back on that, but what do you think was the hardest part about all of that time for you? Was it years later?
Well, I went from being one of 3 children to being really an only child, because my older brother, my mum had my brother and my sister to her first marriage, and I was down the line a bit. So that year, my older brother, before that had happened with my sister, it had been organised that he was going to be going to spend most of his time with his dad, because the Scottish and English curriculums were different, and he was about to go into the academy, and there needed to be this change in circumstance. So that happened as well. So I went from being one of 3 to just me and my mum. So it was a huge life change. And also I went from feeling really quite similar to a lot of my peers to being really quite different. And my sister died in the summer holidays, and I had already spent a year in school. I'd started school a year early because I was seen as academically able to do that, and they thought I was ready, and I was. But obviously with that happening in the summer holidays between primary 1 and primary 2, I ended up repeating primary 1. So there was a lot of change in that year, and lots of core beliefs. Now that I've studied cognitive behavioural therapy, I realised that those formative years before we're 7, a lot of our core beliefs are laid down there. So these these strong I am beliefs are laid down in those early years. So I kind of, from that moment, I felt like I was different, and I was. I was. So I had lots of external confirmation that I was different, that my life was different, and I felt different, and that was hard.
And you mentioned there about our core beliefs that are kind of set down in the first years of our life. And for those that aren't watching, our core beliefs are things that we perceive to be true, aren't they, Amy, about our experiences, about life, and they become the only way that we see things. And so to go through something like you went through at that age, it must have been sort of pretty tricky. And do you think it initially made you believe anything about life that held you back, or did you manage to kind of like turn it around, if that makes sense?
I would say I was quite early on in turning it around. I think it took me a couple of years till I was about 7. But initially I was literally just in pain. I think I was very fearful. It gave me a sense of the world, that the world was unsafe. And that there was things to be fearful, that people that love me leave me. And that I was different, even within my family, I felt different in terms of, extended family. I had 2 aunties that both had nuclear families, and nothing from my perspective adverse had happened to them. So I just felt less than in quite a lot of circumstances.
And that must have been really hard. And I know that, and I guess that, this is your story. Many people watching this will be going through sort of really, difficult times themselves. And I know that they could learn from you. I mean, what did you do to get you through that time? Or, looking back now, was there a strategy that got you through that? What things did you think? What did you do? What helped you through, if that makes sense?
I mean, talking really helped. And I'm really lucky because I didn't go inwards, I went outwards. So, when I was scared, I told somebody. I think that's so important, that, and you know, it can be, so I told my mum sometimes, but I also was really, really lucky. And this is a wonderful stroke of luck looking back. I had the same class teacher for 3 years, and she kind of became like an external part of my family. She wasn't blood related, but I would put my hand up sometimes and call her mum. She knew me insides out. So she knew me the year before it happened, she knew me the year it happened, and then she was also my teacher the year after it happened. So see, that consistency really did help me. And also, you know, my mum also really helped. She was obviously very much in pain. However, we kept talking, and I think keeping talking, keeping connecting, and not shying away from the difficult emotions, not putting them away, and locking the key on them, allowing them to flow, actually, allowing ourselves to feel what we were feeling, and say what we were thinking, really helped us to move through it. I'm not saying you know, there's no right way to grieve. There's no right way to move through adversity. I'm not saying it was perfect. It was messy. It was sad. It was tragic, but we did it. You know, we got through it. And I think when something awful like that happens, you do get through it somehow.
And I think there's a couple of really important things that I'd like to draw out from that. I love what you said. You didn't go inwards, you went outwards. And I think that's a great thing to remember, isn't it? Because it's so easy to become insular, isn't it, when we're going through tough times? But you know that it works to talk about it and keep talking about it, which is really, really good. And, you know, the support from people around you were saying as well, the consistency, that kind of really helped you. And looking back now at what you went through, I mean, would you say that you've turned your pain into power? Would you say that?
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned the age 7 and really managing to turn it around. And I had a really vivid imagination. And I now having just to give you a bit of my history, I've been working in child and adolescent mental health for the last 6 years, and 4 years prior to that, I worked in adult mental health. So I've studied quite a lot about trauma and about childhood and about, you know, how we form our beliefs, and also different ways that we can manage. So now looking back, I realised that I really utilised my imagination as a child to get me through the adversity that I was going through. So yeah, and like most children, you know, most children use their imagination. We learn through play. And I think, you know, I used my imagination to transport myself into a world that I couldn't get hurt. So I actually created this world within my imagination that I couldn't get hurt, that if I fell over, it was fabric. And there was lots of characters within my world that kept me and helped me to feel safe. And it was through, and I actually see that now more as a kind of meditation that I utilized. So yeah, that was a big part of me moving through and past my pain and into a more empowered state. But I remember when I shared the fact that I was doing this with my mum and another like close family members. And I also remember around about that time saying to a family member that I thought that when we were living this reality that we were living through, probably didn't use those words though, that it was kind of like a dream. And that I thought when we died, we woke up. However, that we don't have to wait that long. We don't have to wait to die to wake up, that we can wake up now. And I had that really strong sense as a child of the spiritual, just that life was happening for me, despite reality being quite painful, that actually I was going to learn so much from it. And it did allow me to connect more with nature, with like I was a child that spent a lot of time at the beach, a lot of time. We lived in a small village, and you know, it wouldn't be unusual for me to be found like lying star-shaped on the grass down near the beach looking at the sky. And I sought so much comfort from just being so close to nature. I used to swim in the sea. I was a really good swimmer. It was not like looking back, it was, you know, early 90s, and looking back, if that was now, you would have parents with you and everything, but the whole community used to go down and swim in the sea and just be close to nature, which in turn, I think, allowed me to have this vivid, active imagination, and also to feel really spiritually connected to life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when I was going through university, nature was one of the things that I used to kind of help me. And I don't know about you, from what you were saying there, it kind of gave me a sense of perspective. Just being in this big expanse made everything seem a little bit smaller, if that makes sense, in a really good way. So I firmly believe absolutely that nature is a wonderful healer, and you obviously discovered that too. And so my next question to you is, who are you today as a result of what you've been through?
I would say I'm somebody that is really compassionate. So I feel with people. I would say that I've had to work on that, because it's at one stage in my 20s, I was somebody that had poor boundaries, and I people pleased. And like I say, there was a part of me that didn't, you know, expose who I was, because I felt if only people knew, they would find out, and that wouldn't be a good thing. But now I kind of have integrated my trauma, and I'm somebody that just shows up fully as me. And in turn, I feel like that ripple effects out the way, and I give other people permission to just be themselves as well. And, you know, in terms of having trauma in our past, talking and just being with that trauma and working through that trauma really helps to integrate it and enables us to become whole. And I feel like that's something that I have done, and in turn that's something that I allow others to do through either working with me or even having a conversation, or so I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it does, you know. And who do you like to work with? Who are your like typical clients that you work or love to work with? Is there a type?
It is usually people that have been through difficult things, that have buried it, that feel shameful of it, and maybe feel like there might be something wrong with them, that they're, like I say, different, because that's something that I really felt. And through my program, so I've currently got, I'm on week 10 of a 6-month program with 10 of my clients, and they've all been through something really difficult. As with, you know, I find it difficult to find a person that's been unscathed through life. Life is traumatic, and I think when you get to a certain age, most people have been through something that has changed them, or will have changed them forever. I think I was a bit unusual in that my thing happened when I was really young, so I kind of had that sense from being 5 that this big thing had happened in my life. Sometimes I think these traumas can happen a bit later on in our lives. But yeah, through the work of allowing my clients to get close to their trauma, and by getting close to their trauma, I mean, you know, actually unturning the stones of what they feel ashamed of, and reframing it, but going to the painful place first. And it is like alchemizing it. It is changing it from pain to power. But in order to change it from pain to power, we do have to go to the painful place. But there is such power and beauty in that, because when we do that, we realize that actually it's not something to be ashamed of or scared of, that actually it's something to be held and loved and processed and worked through. So,
absolutely. And I think, so you've used your own experiences now, and you now help others going through sort of similar things, which is amazing, you know. And I loved what you said a little while ago about being authentic, just not being afraid to be ourselves. And to me, that kind of feels like freedom, you know, when you don't care who you're talking to or how you're appearing, you're just you. And I do define that that is freedom for me, if that makes sense. And would you agree with that?
100%. I think it's through being able to be authentic, being able to just show up as myself, be that, you know, having a bad day, or, you know, just being messy human. And also just being able to say, well, this has happened to me, this has happened in my life. It then means that other people that maybe don't have good motives for you can't hurt you, actually. and your sense of belonging is within yourself. It's not out with yourself. So, you know, you come home to yourself, and it's empowering. It's really empowering.
Absolutely. And I know that you're talking about the story that you've been through in the past, but often people say, you know, as coaches, people often say to us, oh, you've got really happy lives. But what they don't realize is we are normal human beings going through normal stuff like normal people, and we are normal people. And I know that you face challenges. I still face challenges. We all face challenges. And what have you learned from your past that you now apply to challenges that you have, you know, in your life these days, or will apply in the future?
Well, it's through working through the past and managing to integrate that now, whenever anything stressful or difficult enters into my reality, I do see it as a gift. So, for example, this year, as you'll know, Maria, but for the benefit of other people, I slipped on ice in January, plus given my 4.5-year-old a piggyback, and my leg, my femur, the strongest bone in the body, literally snapped. And I went from somebody who used to run half marathons, be really physically able, to somebody who had to really learn how to walk again. And 4 months on, I'm still walking with a stick, and learning that process. However, you know, I was lying on the forest floor for 2 hours in -10 conditions, hypothermic, and I just remember feeling like this deep faith in life that this was happening for me. It wasn't happening to me, even when I was in that state. And it actually has transpired, even now, 4 months on, that it did happen for me.
That's really moves me. That's really got tears in my eyes. That's really moved me. Those words were so powerful. It happened for you. Carry on. Yeah.
Thank you, Maria. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, seriously, you know, and this is another, you know, again, you're shining through adversity, you know, it's happening for you. And sorry, I interrupted you there, but you were talking about the gifts, you know, and the gifts. And what gifts have you derived from that experience?
So much, actually, so many. My little girl was there at the time, and she asked the paramedics if I was going to die. You know, it was that, you know, it was a real life trauma, you know, emotionally, physically, on every level. And they were absolutely amazing and reassured her. My mum arrived, took her away, and then that was really when I was able to go, right, okay, this is happening. I was really lucky that my best friend arrived at the scene of the accident, and she is a social worker, and she's just really good in a crisis. So she was looking at me in my eyes, giving me the certainty that I needed. So the first blessing was that I'm surrounded by love, actually, even if it is the paramedics that cared for me and got me into the ambulance, all the staff, the nurses, my consultant, that, you know, I've now got a metal rod in my leg going from my hip to my knee. I spent a week in hospital. I had a blood transfusion, you know, because of COVID, I wasn't allowed any visitors. So I was separated from my little girl for the longest time we've ever spent apart. But it was, you know, little things in that week that were huge blessings, like the kindness that was shown to me, little words like being called sweetheart at times, but by, you know, the odd nurse that would say that, and just being treated with such care. I really was just so grateful. And then the reunion when I came home with my little girl, that she just burst into laughter when she saw me, and she really gently came up onto my knee and gave me a hug. And it was that sense of, wow, you know, what I've got, what I have in my life is massively important, and not to take any of it for granted.
That sounds like a huge gift, you know, that realization. And I mean, I think we know how lucky we are, but it's not until moments like that we really truly appreciate how lucky we are.
And now, like, everything, like, even when I wake up in the morning now and I smile to myself before I open my eyes, because I'm just so happy and joyful with what I have. I mean, I'm not to say that I don't have frustrated, like 4 months into my recovery and I'm still using a stick. I'm a bit like, I wish I was walking. But you know, there is this deep sense of gratitude that I've got now that, you know, I thought I might have had before, but not to this depth, not to this level. And also another massive life change that's happened recently is that I've left my career. So for the last 11 years, I was in a very certain career with a certain amount of money at the end of the month. And, you know, I was partially living my life purpose through that career and helping others in, you know, with mental health. However, you know, that soul element of my work that is so important to me really wasn't allowed to be part of it because, you know, evidence-based and all of that stuff. And I really realized when I broke my legs that it was now or never. Like, it was now to live my life the way I want to live it, or it would never happen because I would just go back to work and I would just get really busy again and doing 101 things. And what I realized when I broke my leg was that I didn't want to spend any time in my life actually doing things that weren't truly in alignment to me fully. So yeah, it was a big leap and a big commitment to myself actually, and also to the people that I help, because I feel that I help people on a really deep level, whereas maybe before it was more surface level that I was helping people, and I really like deep connection and deeply helping people. So yeah, that was the commitment that I made.
Yeah. And so, you know, you've managed to find gifts through every challenge you've been through. And I know that if there's someone watching this right now, I mean, what would your advice be to them if they're going through a really tough time and they're thinking, you know, wow, she's inspiring, but how, you know, Aimee's really inspiring, but how can I turn my pain into power? What's the first thing that you recommend they do? You mentioned talking earlier, but what else could they do to help them start moving?
Look for the blessings in the pain, you know, really look for the blessings in the pain, whatever that is, you know, be that emotionally, be that relationally, maybe it's a difficult person, a difficult situation. There are always, even in the darkest of hours, there are blessings to be found in those moments. Another thing that I would say though as well is that not to discount your emotional reality if that is a difficult one, you know, because one major part of me transforming my pain into power has been validating my own emotional experience when it is hard. So, you know, when I am feeling sad, hurt, upset, anxious, angry, you know, as a female, actually, being angry can sometimes be really unacceptable. And it's actually being accepting and allowing of my emotional experience, and that allows me to move through it quicker. When I give my difficult emotions the same attention that I would do if my little girl was angry, and pull that part of myself in and give it love, then, you know, it dissipates quicker than it's you know, resisting or pushing away the experience.
Yeah, wow, wonderful words and wonderful advice for anybody listening. And Aimee, if anybody wants to connect with you, because obviously your story is so inspiring, the work that you're doing with people is incredible. And if there's someone watching this right now who would like to work with you, who would like to come on one of your programs, where's the best place for them to contact you, or how can they connect with you?
So I'm on Facebook and Instagram. So my Instagram is at @IamAimee_Stewart, and Aimee is AIMEE, and Stewart is STEW. And I also have a Facebook business page called Born to Be, and that's Born to Be, and it's BEE. My bumblebee is my logo, and the reason the bumblebee is the logo is that bumblebees, aerodynamically, they're not meant to be able to fly. Their body's fat and they've got tiny little wings, but bumblebees don't know that, and they go on flying anyway. And that's really my message through my business, is that it doesn't matter actually what adversity we've been through in our lives, that we can transform that and become the best, brightest, most beautiful version of ourselves.
That is amazing. That is, you know, it's been absolutely incredible listening to you here today, Aimee, and I'm sure that many people will take a lot from this. I thank you so much for being here, for sharing, for being so authentic, so vulnerable, so truthful and honest, and so very inspiring. It was amazing, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Maria.
Okay, bye.
Bye.